Hello Summoners and welcome back to another episode of Underrated Picks. Patch 10.2 has taken the Rift by storm, and with it we're bringing you some new underrated picks who are either slept on or simply not getting the amount of play they truly deserve. Make sure to leave any feedback or suggestions in the comments below, and do us a favor by answering the question of the day. What unpopular champion do you think is one minor buff away from being OP? I think a little more damage on Victor would push him into OP territory since his late game power is already so strong. He just needs a little more power in the early game to stabilize, and if he does get a bit of a buff, we'll see what happens. Also, if you guys are trying to climb ranked this season, then go to ProGuides.com and find yourself a challenger coach. With the new changes to the jungle is becoming a hard role to carry in. Maybe you might want to consider a new lane. If you're considering a new role, then go to ProGuides.com and find the challenger coach that you've been waiting for. They'll help you master the role in no time and get you ready to start climbing. So what are you waiting for? Click the link below. Okay, let's talk about Neeko first. In spite of her rise to dominance in competitive play last season, Neeko's play rate has plummeted significantly since her glory days. However, Neeko's win rate in the top lane over the past couple of patches has been nothing short of impressive. Although her play rate is low, she's still a great pick because of how safe she is. Essentially, she plays very similarly to Kennen, but has a safer time clearing waves. Also, considering that Neeko is a champion that utilizes Glacial Augment, her pick-making range is significantly longer than her Yordle counterpart in the top lane. What's likely holding Neeko back from being a super popular pick is that her matchups are all over the place. She gets smacked around in some, but absolutely demolishes others. In a current meta packed with juggernauts, Neeko definitely has a place though, since she can make their laning phase a living nightmare. The combination of her ranged poke, disengage, and crowd control makes playing an immobile melee champion versus her basically impossible, as you have no safe options. Once you've finished a Hextech GLP in Twin Shadows, making those picks should be no problem. It's solo queue after all. Our next top lane pick is going to be Rengar. We mentioned him in our Pro Counter series a few episodes ago, but wanted to shout him out again because of his shockingly low play rate. When you play against a Rengar top, you're honestly playing a completely different game. Those brushes up there are the danger zone, and you are not allowed anywhere near them. Well, unless you want to lose half your HP. Then go ahead and be my guest. Rengar's laning before and after 6 are incredibly powerful. He's one of the strongest early game top laners because of his raw damage output, which honestly makes a lot of others seem like they're underpowered in comparison. Once he hits 6, his kill pressure increases quite a bit if he's already winning, and it also becomes harder to gank him since he can use his ultimate defensively instead. While playing him top usually means you have to build a little bit tankier than the typical cat, Rengar is still capable of bursting down foes with ease. If you're playing on an air map, definitely make an effort to pick up those dragons. The Air Dragon Soul as well as the reduced CDR on his ultimate can make him an even more oppressive pick. Alright, that's it for the top lane, so check out those builds one last time as we head into the jungle. Sometimes I still wonder how AP Shyvana became a thing, but it seems like the guys who are still playing her don't really care. Shyvana jungle has been silently creeping through Summoner's Rift, and it's likely due to the new jungle rewarding power farming quite a bit. What really stood out to our analysts, though, is the spread of her win rates. Even in her losing matchups, Shyvana doesn't do that bad compared to a lot of other junglers who typically see much lower win rates against their hard counters. This is likely due to the fact that Shyvana's heavy farm playstyle often leads to her securing plenty of farm to impact her games consistently. While picks like Echo and Elise are dominant AP junglers, you can definitely consider picking up Shyvana for someone who's a bit easier and would you prefer to power farm while ganking in your downtime. Next up in the jungle is Nunu. While tank junglers have been slowly transitioning out of the meta, Nunu is one of the few who's still clinging onto a decent win rate. Nunu ended last patch with a 52% win rate, and that's not bad by any means. While certain power farming junglers like Master Yi can put him on a timer, Nunu's utility and dragon control make him a champion worth picking up in many different scenarios. Especially with how important dragons seem to be in this season, and with the fact that Baron is still a deciding factor in the majority of games, you really can't write off Nunu. His ability to secure these objectives with his Q and Smite makes it so much safer to have him as your jungler than anyone else. If you're a jungler yourself, you should have an easier time flashing in and smiting to steal those objectives away as well. You'll want to especially pick Nunu if your team is lacking a frontliner or some form of engage. Nunu's engage isn't bad by any means, and his peel is also ridiculously strong. Typically, if you're in a position to round out your team comp with him, you're probably going to need someone who can protect their teammates, and Nunu fills that role excellently. Alright, we're going to show you guys those jungle builds one more time before we move on to the mid lane. Okay, so Ziggs got buffed, and it's time for his usual plug. He's received buffs to his Q, W, and E. Some increased damage, increased slow, and a bigger knockback on his W should definitely stir up his win rate. Although it'll likely stagnate for a little bit as players adjust to the new knockback distance on his W, expect his win rates to slowly rise over the next couple of weeks. Ziggs' greatest strength is how quickly he can crack through turrets. It pressures his opponents to stay in lane as a failed roam can often lead to them losing their turret well before the 14-minute mark. This crazy demolitionist is just the pick you need if you prefer to stay in lane, constantly pushing waves in to pressure their opponent. I personally know how frustrating it is to have my opponent roam and pick up some kills, but by picking a character like Ziggs, you can optimally punish this at the very least. Another thing Ziggs does pretty well is that he stalls games out with his wave clear. As long as the enemy team doesn't pick up Baron, Ziggs can clear waves with his Q, E, and even his ultimate when necessary. Okay, now on to the next mid laner. While he's typically seen as a top laner, this season, Pantheon is finding more success over in the mid lane. His win rate is actually 4% higher than his top lane win rate, and we expect it to not change much this patch. Due to his low magic resistance, Pantheon's results against AP champions vary heavily. Against those that have very telegraphed abilities you can react to, like Syndra's ultimate for example, Pantheon can use his E to block a huge portion of their damage. Simultaneously, his insane all-ins allow him to chunk his opponents anytime they let him walk up for a free stun. It only takes one good trade to set up a solo kill on the next one, so players usually have to start playing pretty safe. If they don't, they die. If they do, Pantheon players get to ult one of their side lanes for free when their opponents concede lane priority. Okay, that's it for the mid lane. Make sure to take a look at these builds one more time before we head down to the bot lane. The preseason has not been kind to Draven, but a small buff to his ultimate should give him a little bit of the help that he needs. Draven is still one of the most potent bot laners in the game since his damage ramps up so heavily while juggling his spinning axes. He's definitely a riskier pick, but against enemies who have bad all-ins, Draven can absolutely abuse his oppressive laning and not allow them to touch the minion wave. Especially with the help of his support who's equipped with crowd control, Draven can push for some kills during the lane phase and snowball out of control. Most Draven players are currently running Press the Attack for the increased all-in potential, as Conqueror is pretty difficult to upkeep. Our next bot laner is going to be Ashe. She's actually doing fine in the preseason, people just aren't playing her as much as they were previously. With very few bad matchups, it's difficult to point out a game where it's not optimal to pick Ashe. Her range, utility, and high damage output allow her to fit well into nearly every single team comp. Since her volley's range is long, she can also farm with it if her enemies are zoning her. Although this will inevitably force her to run out of mana, this is still better than what some other marksmen have to deal with, not being able to touch the wave at all. I personally think that her Hawk Shot is one of the most underrated abilities in the game, especially with how important Dragon is. Being able to scout it out, or the enemy's jungle out, is pretty important. Make sure to not instinctively take Biscuit delivery on her. You have plenty of options on her, one of the more underrated ones actually being Approach Velocity, as it'll allow her to chase down her opponents more effectively. Okay, that's a wrap for the bot lane. We're going to look at those builds one last time before we finish off the video with support. Another champion that received a buff this patch was Sona. Her E's self-movement speed buff has increased, resulting in her being even more slippery than before. As one of the best late-game supports even before this buff, this is some pretty scary news. It's going to be even harder to kill her now, since her speed boost will be even stronger than before. Those moments where you're only one auto attack away from killing her as she floats away are going to be much more common than before. What's been holding back Sona recently is how prominent aggressive supports have been though. They're slowly being rolled back, as we can see with the big nerfs to Nautilus this patch. This, alongside the buff she received, should give her a little bit more power than last patch, and give her some more breathing room to scale up. Sona plays things out slowly. She pokes, shields, and sustains back some damage she and her allies take. Keep that thought process in mind when playing her. The longer the fight goes, the more heals, movement speed buffs, and Qs you're able to throw out. Our last underrated pick is Lulu, who, surprise, got a buff this patch as well. Lulu has been underperforming, but her E's cooldown received a 2-second reduction. This is a huge buff and should allow her to pose a greater threat during the laning phase. The goal with her is also to reach the mid to late game where she shines. Lulu's W is such a versatile tool and can be one of the best peeling tools in the game. Whenever one of her enemies gets fed, she can always hold on to her polymorph to turn that enemy into a cupcake during team fights. It's also pretty difficult to kill a priority target when Lulu is on the enemy team. Aside from being turned into a cupcake, you'll also have to deal with Lulu's shields and ultimate. The reduced cooldown should also be noticeable in the late game, as Lulu will be able to spam it more often than before. Okay guys, that is going to conclude the video. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching it. We appreciate all the support. If you guys like this video, then please leave a like and comment. And if you want to see more videos like this, then subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you guys are interested in getting better at League of Legends this season, then click the link below and go find yourself a challenger coach. I hope the season grind is treating you guys well. It's been treating me quite well this season so far. And as always, that's it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Good luck in your next few games, and we'll see you on the Rift.